Hey everyone, this is Connor with Housebang.com. I hope you're having a great day so far today. We're going to talk about the NAR settlement a bit and kind of how brokerage are talking about it. A quick statistic, I actually saw an article yesterday where the supply of new homes actually rose 14% in May in relative to April. That's pretty big. A lot of builders are kind of in a tricky spot where, mid-development, the construction rates are going up a lot. And they're all of a sudden they realize that they plotted out 1,000 lots, but then they realize that the demand really isn't there for 1,000 lots. We'll talk about that a bit more on another time, but what we'll talk about today is the NAR settlement. Essentially, brokerages are kind of trying to figure out how to pivot and result to the ruling. And if you haven't really seen what the ruling is or the concept of it is, essentially there was sellers, it was like kind of a class action lawsuit pretty much, where sellers sued a variety of big brokerages, real estate brokerages, for setting and like fixing commissions essentially. And the issue with this and how it actually started is that there's no standard commission as a real estate broker, right? The broker gets paid, the broker pays the agent. That's really how it works. And there's no standard fee. So if someone says, hey, I'm thinking about selling my house, what's your office's standard listing fee? I can't legally answer that as a percentage, or our standard 3%. We charge 3%, that's standard and fixed. I can't say that because that would be illegal. And that's essentially where that came across, where, their agents were sued for not, properly disclosing that, all the commissions are negotiable. Legally, no one's obligated to pay anything and there's no standard or fixed rate. And of course, that's a lot of people did, of course, convey that properly. And that's, of course, right, not why the lawsuit was brought. It was the people who weren't, doing this properly. And that's really all it takes is, a few instances of it and all of a sudden it becomes a huge issue. But yeah, so what's the result of this? And it doesn't get rid of commissions. It doesn't get rid of commissions. It's not like, commissions will never be offered again. The reality is they just can't display it. This was the big ruling, is that brokerages, so agents essentially, right, when they list properties, they put them in the MLS. MLSs are local. So for example, there's a Cincinnati MLS. There's, I'm sure a Chicago MLS. There's just examples. They're usually by like city areas. And when agents list their properties in these MLSs, there's a category in the description. It says compensation, and usually we'll say compensation or something like that. And it essentially will have a percentage of what's getting paid to the buyer agent if they bring a buyer to this property and it closes. So that's what if you look through it, I listed a property and let's say I put 3% in the listing description, that would mean that, if you brought me a buyer, my sellers are willing to compensate, your brokerage at 3% commission, and they're getting rid of that. So now it's not going to show that on the website, which doesn't mean at all that compensation won't be offered. And, 99% of circumstances, there's still going to be, right? So there's still going to be compensation being offered to these, buyer agents and buyer brokerages most likely. It's just they can't list it as a fixed amount. They're having people not list it, which is really them not listing it is, supposed to be a reference to it's 100% negotiable. There's no fixed amount because this is 100% negotiable. And that doesn't mean that as a listing agent, you already know what your buyers are willing to offer to, a buyer representative. You may already know that. You've already talked it through with them. They understand it's completely negotiable, but this is the amount they're comfortable offering. So it's just you're not able to display it in a fixed amount on the MLS, inferencing that it's negotiable. And the thing is too, a lot of times, the way you have to approach it is that, you're not able to answer like questions such as I've left the questions that might get you in trouble if you're an agent legally. If someone asks you, what's your office's standard commission rate? You really can't answer it, right? That's a tricky question that could get you in trouble. How much do I have to pay you? That could get you in trouble. Or how much do agents charge these days? You can't just say, agents charge this, this, and this. You have to say, well, a lot of agents do this, but it's completely 100% negotiable. This is where I'm comfortable representing you. You have to be careful with your wording on that. For example, the people who went after that, the NAR in this situation, they would be something like, my agent told me the industry standard is 3%. They told me the listing fee is required to be 3%. That would be an example of something that would get someone in trouble and, resulted to this. And a lot of brokerages are thinking, how can we still list compensation to the buyer party? Because of course, Agents are people just like anybody else. They have expenses to pay, right? They're trying to make a living. So, you can't, these people have to, make money for the, the service that they're providing, the representation that they're doing. It's just, right, you have to explain that, you're technically, right, it's all 100% negotiable. Technically, you don't have to have any, you don't have to have any commission offered at all. But the thing is, that's gonna, that'll most likely deeply affect the marketing of your property. And, we might have trouble getting people in the door if we're not offering any sort of compensation, because it's really, that's just the honest truth of it, right? If you're a seller and you're not offering any compensation, most likely agents are going to be, reluctant to show the property because, of course, right, they're not going to be compensated. And that's just the bottom line of it. And in saying this, right, we'll still see buyer compensation. It's just you can't really list it publicly in this buyer compensation spot in the MLS as a fixed amount. Real estate firms, they've been talking about it. Where can we sneak it in? Where can we put it in the listing description? Like, when you see a listing of a property, there's a description that says, like, check out this beautiful ranch, this, and that. We're offering this percentage or so of compensation. Can they sneak it in the listing the listing description? I think they're not going to allow that. Of course, the rule, everything's still underway with House will affect. I don't think they're going to let that. We'll see if that gets by, but I have a feeling that the parties involved, they're going to probably try to shut that down. And I think it might end up just becoming a verbal basis where, if you're an agent, you talk to your seller, this is what we're comfortable offering. If someone calls to inquire about the property, you convey it at that point verbally. I think that's kind of what we'll see a lot if they, shut it down from putting it in the description. But, this is, it's really, it just comes down to, a few examples of it not really going too well and people not, clarifying that there's no standard rate. That's what led to this. And if you're a listing agent, I kind of wrote a little excerpt here, which would be something that you might hear, as a result of this, how this would be discussed. It's right. You're my seller. I can't make you pay anything to the buyer party, although it will most likely serve against your interests, as agents will be extremely reluctant to work with us. Agents have to make a living and cover their expenses just like anybody else, but there's no standard rate. There's no standard rate. You technically don't have to have any sort of commission offered at all, but it may serve against us in marketing this property, but it's not required. Keyword, not required. There is no standard rate. So let me know what you think about this and how you think this will affect the real estate market, if it will affect it at all, or will it, I mean, to me, a lot of it does sound like it's, as a buyer's agent, it can be kind of, nerve-wracking, how do I know if I'm going to be compensated here? But I think we're going to start to see new forms coming out to where, if you're a buyer representative, there's going to be a separate form for, compensation offered to the buyer brokerage. I think we'll start to see some new forms involved in real estate transactions, but we'll see. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And of course, if you have any recommendations or topics, go ahead and let me know. I look forward to seeing you again.